And to talk more about how the pandemic is impacting women in Africa, we've invited the Executive Director of UN Women, Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, onto the program. Welcome to DW News Africa, Mrs. Mlambo Ngcuka. The United Nations says that most of the people that have been pushed into poverty by COVID-19 are women. How will women in Africa be affected?
Women in Africa are in the essential services to begin with. This is in the healthcare sector. Just like it is globally, they are about 70% in the health sector. So they are exposed to the pandemic much more, but also they are also in the services and industries that have lost most of the jobs. Many of them will not be able to go back to pre-pandemic economic activities. And those that are in the informal sector who are self-employing, those informal sector and little family business have been decimated by the pandemic.
Right.
And there isn't stimulus packages to address women in the informal sector. So getting on their feet again is extremely difficult.
Right. So as these vaccines are being procured and rolled out, the conversation is now shifting to the recovery from the pandemic. And you've talked about the fact that governments should be including women in their recovery strategies. And as you've said, most of African women are in the informal sector. They don't get support from the government. So how can they be included in the recovery strategies that the governments are drawing up now?
What we are advocating together with women's groups to governments is that the interventions and the relief measures that they are putting in place must be designed specifically to speak to women in the private sector. They should not have some of the red tape that are structured for the private and formal sectors, because those do not reach the women who are in the informal sector. The level of literacy, the lack of insurance, the fact that their businesses are not registered should not work against them.
And what is your advice to a woman in Africa listening to you today? How can she position herself for the life after the pandemic to recover economically?
Well, in the first place, I think we must make sure that girls in Africa do not miss out of their education. We should not have another lost generation. We are seeing that the number of girls that are going back to school after the pandemic has reduced significantly. That is a great concern. Child marriage, trafficking are some of the ills that are affecting the girls. So we need to rally around that part. Women who are employed need to be reskilled, and we don't expect the women to do that themselves. The support has to come from governments and other institutions, including the UN and the private sector, to help to retool women for the jobs of the future. And those that are in agriculture, we are urging governments to procure food that women produce wherever possible. Senegal is a good example of a country that has begun to procure rice from women who are small producers, producing as a group and being able then to sustain their business in that way.
Ms. Mlambo Ngcuka, you were the first female deputy president of South Africa, and at that time you were actually the highest ranking woman in the country's history. What's your sense about if there's more space opening up in Africa for women to lead?
It's a mixed answer, Kristen. There's definitely is a bigger push from women to claim their space at a high level, and there's more acceptance of women as leaders, but it is just not happening fast enough. It is slow, and also it is something that you have today, it's gone tomorrow, because when there's an election, there's no guarantee that the woman that was elected before would go back again. As we speak right now, there's only one woman president in Africa. It is only Ethiopia. So, certainly we're seeing legislation, we're seeing quotas being introduced. We are having government asking us to assist them to design these quotas. But then at the end, it also depends on voters. And there, sometimes voters let us down.